Good morning, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today we're finally getting back to recording. I've had a pretty hectic few weeks, um, and it's going to stay hectic for a little bit, because I'm probably going to wind up having to move. Just heads up, because uh, commuting to my new place of work is just it's going to get expensive after a while, and with gas not looking like it's going to come down anytime soon, it's probably for the best. Anyway, as always, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I do greatly appreciate them. Likes and comments help feed the algorithm, and subscriptions, well, they help us try to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I'd really love to see that happen. I think I said I'd love to hit 1,500. It's an election year. We're still in March, so we're a ways away from when it really picks up the election content here on YouTube, but I'd still like to see some progress. Anyway, we're looking at the Senate elections and doing a bit of an update, and I've done some housekeeping for the most part, and I've got on this screen an aggregate of polls, and we're going to start with Missouri, which is safe Republican unless the Republicans nominate Greatens, and he would drop this into a tilt or even just a pure toss-up. That's how bad of a candidate he is. He's the former governor who had a sex scandal. Anyway, so I'm putting that in the likely category simply because of that possibility. And you may notice Illinois, Colorado, and Florida I've just put in the likely category as well as Alaska. Because, well, they are that competitive. Okay, let's go to Wisconsin. And in Wisconsin, there's only two polls. Both of them are from last year. And both of them are internal polls from the campaign that was running them, and both of them are from the Democratic side. And that leads me to believe they are optimistic. And this was before the national environment shifted towards the Republicans. I'd honestly put Wisconsin in a lean Republican category in favor of Ron Johnson, just by looking at the only two polls that I'm seeing here. If I go to Ohio next, Ohio's actually looking decently competitive if you look at, well, all of these polls are from last year before the national environment shifted by a net of 4 points towards the Republicans. They went from a little over Democrat +2 in the generic ballot to a little over Republican +2 on the generic ballot as I'm recording this. So that's a 4, maybe 5 point swing in favor of the GOP. And yeah, that's a swing in the national environment. Now, Ohio is one of those, Rust Belt states with a higher proportion of swing voters. They're part of that region. And so that means that shift would be amplified. That also goes for Pennsylvania. So while looking at the polls, I'm not as confident as I was. I was putting it as borderline safe Republican at that point. I am dropping it down to likely because it's pretty likely the Republicans do win here. It's just a case of which Republican. I think everybody is pretty sure that Tim Ryan is going to be the Democratic candidate, but that's about all everybody knows. If we go to Arizona, most recent polls are from January from Data for Progress as a pollster, and honestly, they tend to favor the Democrats. if I actually pull up their pollster ranking, yeah. Yeah. And looking at it, they pretty much across the board overestimate Democrats. So by almost 2%. And that leads me to think, okay, Arizona is actually competitive. The other polls are from last year, and I think the only candidate who was even close to Kelly last year was Brnovich, and Brnovich is the only big name in that race right now. So I'm still going to lean in favor of the incumbent in this case, because at the end of the day, the Republican Party is very fractured in Arizona. And even though the national environment is a lot more favorable to the GOP, they still have their internal problems they have to deal with, which can hamper their ability to win. We go to Georgia. This is pretty much Herschel Walker versus Raphael Warnock. And all polling that I've seen, including the most recent poll, which I don't know anything about Blueprint polling. They're a new pollster. Yeah. Everything this year shows Herschel Walker ahead. And you have to go back to November of last year to see a poll where Warnock was ahead. And I think part of that's due to the national environment. I think part of that's due to billing. I think that's partially due to advertising. And honestly, Herschel Walker is just a very strong brand in Georgia. Like I said, don't underestimate the college football vote in the Deep South. I'm not kidding. Peyton Manning, for example, could go to Tennessee, pick an office, and he would win it. Now, part of that's because he would probably run as a Republican, let's be honest. But he's also a legend in Tennessee. Not quite the type of legend that Herschel Walker is, but in Georgia, but the point remains. But yeah, you could legitimately name in the Deep South, name a state, name a legendary college football player, and they have a leg up over some random candidate. And in this case, even an incumbent senator, who the Democrats are going to spend potentially $100 million alone on just this race to keep Warnock in the Senate. But I don't think it'll be enough. Herschel Walker's brand is just that strong. I'm only going to tilt the race towards him because I learned my mistake. I was way overconfident on Georgia before the 2020 elections. But every good pollster that has polled this race so far this year has shown Herschel Walker leading Warnock. by 1 to 4 points. Quinnipiac, that was a 1-point lead. I don't know who this pollster is, but the University of Georgia's polling group, which is only rated as BC, but they're decent. They're pretty good. That was sponsored by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, showed Walker up by nearly 4 points. So, yeah. Then we go to Nevada. This is the one that I've seen some interesting polls out of. If we ignore the partisan polls, or not even the partisan polls, just the ones that tend to have favorable opinion, exclude everything from previous year, this is why I'd be careful with blueprint polling. The only other poll of the race was done by Ohio Predictive Insights for the Nevada Independent, a newspaper. And they showed Democrat Cortez Masto ahead by 9, and the most recent poll shows Laxalt ahead by 7. Other than that, it's a case of 2 Republican polls and another poll by the Nevada Independent, the newspaper, or website. I don't know anymore. But yeah, it's basically showing different things. It's definitely a toss-up, and it's definitely a race that the Republicans could win. And I'm going to put that as a tilt GOP seat. I think it's a lot more likely than Arizona. But the polling picture there is very unclear, is the best way I could describe it. If we go to North Carolina, right now, everything, well, there's only polls from last year, but they show the Republicans up. I think that's good enough to say, and that was back before the national environment really flipped. So I think that's leaning towards Republicans holding on. If we go to New Hampshire, the only polls that showed a Republican ahead included Sununu, and even polls from this year showing that Hassan does have an edge. I'm going to stay with the incumbent here as a lean for right now. Then Pennsylvania. Surprisingly, from Pennsylvania, the only thing we have are polls that were sponsored by the Democrats or very specific candidates, Democratic candidates. Fetterman being the candidate who sponsored the most polls that were released. And obviously they're showing him ahead of every potential Republican. And the only one, none of them are from this year. And the most recent one showed him only just barely beating Dr. Oz. So that's interesting. And, of course, you balance that out. I think it's actually likely the Republicans hold this seat. Barely. But I think they'll hold on to it. So, yeah. And then looking at other Senate races, Kansas is surprisingly more polled than Pennsylvania, which is weird. York has been pulled, but it's pretty clearly going to be a Democratic hold. No. Well, never mind. I'm trying to find this year's. Yeah, so, yeah. It's looking very much like the Republicans are going to make a gain, if that makes any sense, in the Senate, a net gain. And it could potentially include Arizona, New Hampshire. I think anything beyond that might be a stretch, but 54 seats is nothing to sneeze at, especially when the Republicans have such a good map in the 24 midterms. Because West Virginia, that's a pickup opportunity. Michigan, pickup opportunity. Maine is a big pickup opportunity. Minnesota is an outside shot. Montana, big pickup opportunity. Nevada is a bigger opportunity than Arizona would be, simply because Kyrsten Sinema is a very strong candidate in Arizona. If she gets primaried, Arizona is absolutely on the table. But yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, potentially 8 if you include New Hampshire. No, sorry, New Hampshire is not on the table that in 24. New Mexico might be on the table in 24. Virginia probably won't be. Ohio, I legitimately just completely forgot about Ohio. I think Wisconsin will also be on the table. Yeah. But Ohio, like I said, it's going to be the same map as 2018, and the Republicans had a good year, and they underperformed what they should have in the Senate. Republicans could easily get 60 seats. Easily. Even with a very modest gain, even with a 2-seat gain, 60 seats is not outside the question in 2024. Which I think should scare Democrats. It really should scare Democrats. Especially if Biden remains as unpopular as he is. Because he's going to drag down every single Democrat with him. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I've got a few things I need to do today, so take it easy. I'll see you all next time. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.